We're not trying to sell you anything except for an idea. Would you be willing to have an idea? Yeah, thank you. That's what we're looking for. And it may not be exactly, for you, then you adjust it. Go to the left of it, go to the right of it. What we do at Reliabilityweb, and we always have for the past 25 years, is we're a hub for information. We don't know everything. You know everything. And you may be wondering, wait a second, all I do is Maximo. I don't have to go out and lubricate bearings. I don't have to fix pumps. I just do Maximo. This stuff is not my job. This stuff is your job. At least from one perspective. There may be other stakeholders across your organization that have different jobs that relate to it as well. And that's the idea of using a framework, is sort of locking, freezing everything in place so that there's no misunderstanding, as Morris said, what we mean when we say criticality analysis, what we mean when we say failure mode, failure mechanism, failure cause. If you don't have a language of reliability, you will never get to reliability, because you'll spend your time chasing misunderstandings and misinformation. So time for something new. We want to transform your thinking. You came in here thinking one thing about asset management, reliability. We want you to go out thinking a different thing about it. You never have you ever tried, just to force something through the system? Force something onto the technicians, force something onto the workforce? How well does that work? Not very well at all. To change something, you build a new model that slowly makes the old model obsolete. And we created Uptime Elements to meet your team exactly where they are. It's yours. You don't have to buy anything. Here, it's yours. You don't have to buy anything. It's yours. You have it right now, right? And it meets your team exactly. There are no requirements for Uptime Elements. None. Zero. It meets your team exactly where they are. If you have to make your team do something to get to Uptime Elements, then we're doing it wrong, right? We meet your team where they are, and they go from there. And slowly but surely, those obsolete ideas will disappear, and it'll be replaced with this. The way it worked, kind of the infrastructure, if you want to know, at Reliabilityweb, at the heart, we're publishers. I started Reliabilityweb 5 years before Google went live. We've been publishing 15 case studies for a month for 25 years. So we get to see a bit. It's like I forget what insurance company it is. We know a lot because we see a lot. That's why we know a lot. There's a great group of, as Russ indicated, it was a VSIG, a virtual special interest group. We also call them consortiums. And there is an EAM, APM, an enterprise asset management, asset performance management group that wrote this Maximo book, and they're going further. They didn't stop. They got to the Maximo book. We have a second edition literally on the heels of this first edition, and then there's a lot more work going on in that consortium. So there's a community of users that are taking the framework and then sharing back with you what their implementation experience is, so we don't all have to put our hand on the hot stove. They're putting their hand on the hot stove, so you don't have to. And a really great information. And then there's a group that can, if you have that kind of a scheme in your company, that you can certify people. We think certification is very valuable. Some of the most successful companies we work with, Honda or Bristol Myers Squibb, as an example, they were the first two adopters, have over 500 certified reliability leaders each on their teams. So can you imagine the commonality of the understandings, of the language, of every sentence, of every phrase that's being said? It's really powerful. It's broken into knowledge domains. I'll spare you the lecture on Uptime Elements, but just a high-level walkthrough. Reliability engineering for maintenance. So it's specifically in the context of maintenance to understand what assets are critical to the delivery of the value that the company wants to do. In other words, put another way, what asset, if it goes down, is going to stop everything, And it's not always the big giant, in a paper plant, the paper machine. It's not always the big giant, most complex asset or the money maker. We were in a mining company. We found out that the number one priority, the number one criticality was a fuel pump at a gas station, at a fueling station that was about a half mile outside of the mine's fence. And if that gas pump went down, then no truck was going to be getting any fuel. A little insignificant gas pump. was the most critical asset. So what's the most critical asset? Maura always sandbags when we're out on plant visits, and she'll turn to you. So if you ever, I'm just going to warn you in case you ever invite us to the plant, she'll turn to you about halfway through the tour and say, what is your top critical asset? And Jim will say something and Susan will say something else, and they're on the same team, right? And so that's part of the confusion. The second thing that's in the orange, and by the way, we colored it because you know what we want your boss to say? Hey, how you doing on the orange? How's green coming? How's blue coming? You know, because once we simplify like that and everybody understands what we're talking about, it's super easy. The second concept inside of orange is, how do your assets fail? IBM's giving us really tremendous capability to capture failure. I really, to be honest with you, I should have named my company FailureWeb, but you probably wouldn't have come to the conference if it was sponsored by FailureWeb. I'm not sure, maybe you would have. But understanding reliability is understanding failure. How well do you understand failure? How well does your team understand failure? That's really what reliability is. And the methods now that are built into Maximo, Michael DeSabre showed me a demo of a facilitated RCM yesterday. Who was facilitating? AI. How long did it take? Like 40 seconds. I was shocked, to get a whole maintenance strategy on a particular asset or a system. I'm telling you, I'm not kidding you, old school, up until yesterday, was 2 weeks and 4 or 5 of your best people in a room, and your boss is saying, why are all those people in the room every day? They don't seem to be working, right? And to get a maintenance strategy, 40 seconds in Maximo now. How much extra does it cost? Nothing, if you have the mass platform. But you got to have the mass platform. So that's the idea there. One thing you find out when you start studying that, and I think you know this, your assets are not going to collaborate with you on your time-based PMs. Your assets don't fail, only about 20%, and that's being very generous. 20% of your assets are failing on some sort of time or usage basis. The rest are failing on a random basis, and if you don't have a way to deal with that, I'm 65 now. If I go into the doctor and the doctor says, Terrence, did you know of all scientific research, human male American hearts last an average of 65 years. So it's time we better put you on the table and replace your heart. I got a work order right here. It says time to replace Terrence's heart. He's 65. I say, wait a second, let's slow down here. What about an EKG? What about blood pressure? What about some x-rays? What about some blood tests? Trend me over time. And then tell me I need a new heart. I might listen, but I'm not just going to do a new heart because I'm 65. By the way, I do yoga every day, walk 4 miles every day. So I'm trying to avoid that particular outcome. I want life extension. I want my asset to extend in life. But we need sensors, vibration sensors, infrared, fluid analysis, ultrasound, electrical signature analysis. All those now. Before, what were we going to do with all that data? Because someone walked around with little battery-operated machines and took that data back to their computer, and the data was locked into a proprietary platform. Now it goes straight into Maximo. Straight into Maximo. So now what are you doing? You're expanding out, not just the work order. You're expanding out information about the health of that asset and being able to predict failures before they come. This is where we all live. I mean, this is the work order, right? PM, preventive maintenance planning, scheduling, the MRO spare parts, the CMMS or EAM transactional system where we're recording all our history. And by the way, this is probably the most advanced domain of all of us. It's probably the most mature domain all of us have. But what we find, the resulting data that comes from this domain has a 60% overall trust factor. If that was your accounting system, your CFO would be fired by the time you got out of this keynote. You can't have a 60% financial data confidence. That's not possible. No business could survive like that. Do you know when you Google asset management, and I invite you to do so, it doesn't say Reliabilityweb and it doesn't say Maximo. It says J.P. Morgan. Assets are money. Money. So just like your financial system, your assets are simply cash converted to another kind of value. It's money. But we are not tracking it like a financial system would track cash. Why not? We converted our cash to assets. We need to transactionally record everything to do with that asset. That's the right thing to do. So even though that's probably the most mature domain of all of them in a group like this, we're still lagging. We have a lot of work, and that work is going to be worth it because of the potential that IBM has delivered to us in their new software. When we first introduced, we thought leadership was going to be the breakthrough. We don't mean leadership the CEO. He's not going to make your lubrication program much better, or she's not going to make your lubrication program much better. We mean leadership at the technician level. We mean leadership at the supervisor level, leadership at the management level. Everybody, can you imagine everybody a leader? Everybody in your maintenance, everybody in your reliability, everybody in your asset management, and that's empowered leadership that we're talking about. That's the center of our whole strategy. But the real breakthrough happened when we connected the dots of the technical domains and the leadership domain to asset management. Asset management is your business process. How do you make decisions about your assets over 25 years? If you're going to build a bridge, you know, in London, the reason London could be an economic center of the world is because 100 years ago, when they did the capital project called the London Sewer, it was X2. It was times 2 what was needed. And if they wouldn't have built it as a times 2 what's needed, there'd be no London as a financial center of the world today. It would have capped out about 70, 80 years ago. It's capped out now, and they're building a new sewer system now, but it lasted 100 years, and look at the economic growth of a city like that. Really incredible. So that's asset management. Who made that decision? Who funded that decision? What were the risks of that decision? And fully understanding and coordinating the activities around the decisions. That's what we really need. And that's what Maximo is the technical system that'll support bringing all that coordinating activity together and making those decisions together over the entire asset life cycle. They showed you a sneak peek of the management system. What I have discovered in creating management systems over the last 20 years, they are the most boring thing you can possibly talk about. Totally boring. I'm so excited about them, I can't even believe it. You know, because that's not my style, but I love these management systems. I helped ISO write ISO 55000. Many of you in this room probably already use ISO 9001. You use ISO 14001. Do you know you can take your asset management process and tuck it right under 9001 as one of the key organizational processes? Did you know you can take your asset management program, put it right under ISO 14001 as a key process there? You can use ISO 55001 also, but you don't have to. And this management system, the Uptime Elements management system, we wrote for the 6,000 companies that are already using it. We want to give them a formalized approach. So it's a management system for Uptime Elements for companies that are using another management system already because it bolts right on. It's already compatible. And the 4 ideas behind it are aligned objectives. What we mean by that is purchasing has a certain set of objectives. What if their objectives are save money on maintenance spares? And they save so much money on the new gaskets that you have oil leaks every 6 months. Did that really save money? Right? That's what we mean by aligned objectives. Can purchasing have the same objective as maintenance, as operations, as engineering? As how do we, it's hard. We created these departments because people are specialized and they do really great specialized work. But there's only one company, and there's really only one aim on the company. So transparent and consistent decision-making, risk-based, informing those decisions, what tools to use, and Maximo's giving us a whole suite of tools to understand the risk involved with our assets. And then start looking at, if you're going to build a railroad that's going to last 100 years, by the way, soon you'll be also building a digital railroad that'll last 100 years. Do you have the infrastructure and the staff and the team to manage the digital railroad as well as you can manage the physical railroad? We're going to have a digital counterpart to every single asset. So do you have the infrastructure and the commitment to management of change and keeping the digital model as accurate as the physical model? Right? So we need a long-term strategic view. Asset management is what you do to get value from your assets. It assures value from the assets. What's value? Whatever your company says it is. Whatever your company management says it is. Generally, it's money, but other times it's other things. We use reliability to assure we're effective, that the work we're doing is effective. It's the right work. We use work execution management because we want to be efficient in that work. But I will say, we do find people who are extremely efficient at doing the wrong work. And they may be doing work that actually is damaging the assets as opposed to nurturing the assets. So you want to make sure you use the orange to guide your team to doing the effective work so that they can efficiently do the effective work. See, there's another side to it. And then ultimately, all of that, as Maura mentioned, comes from the people and culture at work. It's a new generation, for one thing, but it's been time anyway. We could have done this in the 2000s, in the 1990s, the 1980s. It's a people and culture at work is where your performance is going to come from. So is your environment for the people and culture at work nurturing? And it doesn't really matter how you roll out these various capabilities in Maximo. You want to roll them out, obviously, the ones that have the most value to your organization. But what really matters is that you're aligning it with the aim of the organization. Do you speak reliability?
The Certified Reliability Leader training really helped me learn to connect the bigger picture, understanding where the gaps were. Like, I had a huge lack of knowledge in strategy and plan.
Anyone can see benefit from it, be it an engineer like me, or maybe someone in corporate that's looking to understand reliability a little more.
Took my exam afterwards, had passed that, and all that knowledge I kind of gained, I went back to the plant and then I started seeing all these gaps that we had that previously I was just, ignorant to, right?
Being able to have a framework to organize those ideas and group them in ways that you can communicate with people effectively on needs and plans, that's really powerful for me.
The biggest gap was kind of lubrication because nobody's looking into it. And so, I built my big black belt projects around that and built up a team and made the change.
Reliability is built throughout an organization, so not just one person needs to understand it, but when you make it a culture, it really can see drastic change and see influence throughout your entire organization.
Having that information was a game changer for me.
Really great guys there. And so using a common framework, and as Russ said, if you don't like this framework, it's fine. You use any framework, but lock the language down. When you use a common framework, it sets the language and it permits cross-functional. See, we got to get all the different departments working. Maintenance already knows. Maximo people already know, but we need a bunch of other stakeholders and we need language to do that. Again, we said we're leadership-centric. Leadership creates the culture, not CEO, leadership. That's a verb. That's what you do. That's what your supervisors do. That's what your technicians do. Leadership creates the culture. Culture delivers the performance. If you want to change performance, you focus on leadership. Buckminster Fuller called that a trim tab. And if you don't manage reliability culture, it's probably managing you, and you're not even aware of the extent that it's managing you. Here's the KPI cascade. Leadership is a leading indicator for culture. So if your culture is lagging, you might want to look at the leadership, right? Culture is a leading indicator for performance. So if your performance is lagging, you might want to measure the culture. And then high reliability organizations focus on leadership and culture as much as they do on technology, as much as they do on technical processes to achieve performance. I used to think reliability was the job of the maintenance department. Now I realize that we all lead reliability as a team the same way we lead safety, through culture and empowered leadership. So you may be now at Maximo Manage, but we need to get these business processes implemented. And it isn't just so we can fill the data fields in Maximo, because you can't just manage if you wonder why you still have reactive work, it's because you're doing mostly time-based, and you're gonna continue to have these surprises. Because guess what? You can't plan. Breakdowns. You want to ruin your planning percentage? A breakdown. And you can't eliminate breakdowns without moving forward into monitor, into moving forward into reliability strategy, into moving forward into predict, into moving forward into health, into moving forward into asset lifecycle management. Now you'll be amazed without even doing one improvement to your planning. You'll be amazed at your planning and scheduling compliance if you do this. So make your own Maximo burger, have it your way. In fact, it has to be your way. It can't be our way. It can't be IBM's way. It can't be the partner's way. It has to be your way, unique to the context of your organization. I can't stand the one thing I don't like about fast food restaurants is I don't like them deciding what's going on my burger. So I always order a special burger when I get there. Plus, I know it's freshly, at least I hope it's freshly cooked. The target, an empowered, engaged, cross-functional culture of reliability. Reliability is everyone's responsibility, not just the maintenance department. When you have an engaged and empowered workforce, it's not about making reliability happen, it's about letting reliability happen. Let's give away some computers.